Good day to you all. My name is Gideon. I'm here to introduce a topic which is called friction. Now, as we have already know that a friction is a force which can oppose a relative motion, then we try to introduce this topic. For example, we have different aspects which friction can occur. And when we talk magically, we talk about the friction. Friction can exist in solid, then friction can exist in liquid. But we are going to look at friction in solid before going to the friction in liquid. Then, before friction will occur, two objects must come in contact, as we have already known. So, a practical examples of friction is your writing. When you are writing a note, two body can also stick together due to friction. Then another practical examples of a friction is when you are running a race or walking is a practical examples of friction. Without friction, it is impossible to walk. So also we already know that friction has many applications in our daily activity. Then they are very important. Also, friction is also applied in automobile car brakes, which we have already know. Then this topic we are going to look at the different types of friction we have. Number one, I'll be talking about static friction. Yes, that's number one. What's static friction? As we have already seen, the opposing force that come into play when one body tends to move toward over the surfaces of another, but the actual motion has not yet started. Yeah. Now, what is the definition is trying to explain? Is explaining the what? The first law of motion. For example, you can see a block being placed on horizontal table. Then you can see that the weight, which is the reaction force, which is equivalent to mg, the object is still at rest. According to the first law of motion, we state that every object will continue in the state of rest unless it is acted by what? External force. So this means the static friction. Whenever you hear the word statics, it means when something is stagnant or something at rest. Statics. So it means you can see a book being placed on horizontal table. It's being placed there and it's not moving. So then it means that for this book to move, it need a force. It needed a force for it to move. Then which is called the what? The applied force, which is the external force needed to move the position of this book. Then if you look at this, it's really explaining. A static friction is talking about a friction at rest when an object is not moving. So another example is that when a force is being applied on a body, it remains at rest. Then if the static force is also equals to the frictional force or the applied force, if the applied force P is also remain at rest, then the static friction will be equivalent to the what? Applied force. Number two type of friction is the limiting friction. Yes, the limiting friction. So which means the force is applied and the what? It increases the force of what? Static friction also increases. It means the body will move, but the body will go back to the same position. So which is static force or the limiting friction is proportional to the normal reaction, which is FL is equals to what? Mu XR. To get our mu XR, our mu X will be equal to frictional force divided by the normal reaction, which we know that the coefficient of the static friction is a dimensionless quantity. It has no units. The number 3 type of friction we are going to look is kinetic or dynamic friction. What is dynamics or kinetic friction? It means the friction that is applied when an object is moving in motion. We have already know that motion is the change in position of a body or of an object with respect to time. So the kinetic friction or dynamic friction is the force which increases further and sets the body in motion. It means it sets the body in motion. The frictional force opposes the motion. Then there is a force which is called kinetic force, which opposes the motion or depend on the normal reaction, which is equivalent to Fk is equals to mu kr, where mu k is called coefficient of a kinetic friction or dynamic friction, which the value depends on the nature of the surface in contact. We know that this friction is very, very important. So I think we're going to stop here. In our next class, we look at some of the calculation on it.